Welcome to Scaling the Well, the podcast to elevate your view.
Hello, this is Brian P., and welcome to Scaling the Well. Please be sure to follow me on Instagram at Scaling the Well Podcast, on Twitter at Scaling the Well, Facebook Scaling the Well, and at my website, www.scalingthewell.com. So I am still in Las Vegas, and it's kind of a little gloomy day. Yesterday was more clear, but I decided to do something that's a little more practical. Sometimes I'm throwing out stuff that's more philosophical, and this will be a little more philosophical as well, but I thought I'd give you something that's more of a tool that you can use. And this also goes with some questions I've been asked lately by just various people. And this goes more into my HR background and not so much as my social work background. So today we're going to talk about how to get promoted. And a lot of people do a lot of hiring. A lot of organizations do a lot of hiring this time of year. And actually, my favorite part of human resources, my favorite part is investigations. I'm pretty good at that, but we could do another podcast on that. But other than investigations, it's career development. I love it when people come to me and ask me, how to get from point A to point B. And I think that it's important to know that there is a methodology to it. And I think that a lot of people, find it very easy to advance in their careers. And some people are stuck. So hopefully this podcast helps you a little bit. So when I first began my MBA program, my very first instructor told me, and this is actually written, it was in the textbook as well, but that people get promoted for really one of two reasons. Either they're technically proficient or they're politically astute. And I found that that's pretty much true. But why is this important to you? So I think that you need to do some self-reflection and see where you are and which one of those two things you're stronger at. Because I think all of us have both of those. But some people, let's just go into what they are. So, being technically proficient is kind of what it sounds like. You are someone who's just very good at your job. You're basically a SME, subject matter expert at what you do. People come to you, when they have problems. Your peers, who may even be in the same classification, look to you for guidance on certain tasks, and you know how to process your workload efficiently. And that's what I would pretty much consider technically proficient. And people who are technically proficient, they get promoted, but sometimes they don't have a strong sense of the other one, which is being politically astute. And when I go into what being politically astute is, I always want to just kind of give you the caveat that I want to make this into a positive thing, because a lot of times when people hear the word political or even the way that I explain this, and I don't know if I can explain this very well, but they think, these are the brown nosers. These are the people who kiss up to people. They basically don't deserve the positions they have or the accolades they get. And I don't think that's necessarily the case. Yes, there are some people like that. But to me, being politically astute covers a whole wide range of things. I think, this argument can actually go, between the two things of being technically proficient and politically astute. It's kind of, in a way, the same balance you have between IQ and EQ. We're not really talking about intelligence. We're just talking about which type of intelligence you're more proficient at, you're strongest at. So if you're politically astute, it doesn't necessarily mean you're somebody who kisses up to the boss, because that doesn't always work. Even if you were somebody who does like doing those type of things, if you do it the wrong way, some people won't appreciate it. You have to know which type of person is receptive to what type of communication. And we'll get into that a little bit later as well. But somebody's politically astute could also be somebody, like if there's a big system change in your organization or a practice change, and there's a lot of uncertainty or there's a reorg going on, you could be the person that kind of calms people down or finds out information that other people can't get and yet actually helps use it to maintain morale or increase morale. That's actually adding value to a company or an organization just as much as somebody who has the technical skills. So it is an important ability to have, and so I want people to think about that, because it's not just about being liked; it's about somebody. When we talk about fit, and you're going to hear that a lot, is this person a good fit? Is that person a good fit? Usually, fit is usually goes into the politically astute category. So it is a soft skill. But a lot of soft skills add value. So just remember that. So if you're somebody who is technically proficient, and you know that, and you know your job inside and out as far as tasks, as far as your essential job functions and all that, well, maybe you want to work on how to get those particular abilities known. Put that out into the ether. Somebody who's politically astute, it's maybe somebody you should partner up with, or vice versa. Somebody who's politically astute needs to kind of partner up with somebody who is technically proficient, and then you can both round each other out. So, for example, if you are the technically proficient person, then maybe your problem is that some of the higher ups in your organization don't actually know what you do or that you're doing them. So that could be a problem. So you could be working your tail off, and you might be processing things at twice the rate of your peers, and yet no one knows that. So how would you do that? Somebody who's politically astute, or if you had a friend who was politically astute at work, they might teach you how to talk to your managers and even your directors, and just kind of casually how to slip those things into conversations, and maybe even point out things that you're doing, in a larger sense, so they understand that. And I'm not saying that just to throw that out there, just for whatever, but sometimes they have legitimate reasons. If somebody's asking questions at an all staff meeting or something, you could ask a question, and due to your technical proficiency, you could ask a question that brings up an issue or a bottleneck that no one's even thought of, or if it's something that has been thought of, maybe you could even propose a solution within the context of that question, and then you stand out. That's being politically astute and using that to highlight your technical abilities. On the other hand, if somebody who is already politically astute and you have those communication skills and you know how to speak to the higher ups in your organization and everyone already thinks well of you, maybe you want to round out that with understanding. Obviously you have some technical ability because you already have the job, but you want to understand how that fits into the greater context. So if you have a friend who is very technically proficient and really knows the organization, at least from a technical level, like how different systems work together, maybe where funding comes from and how there's different funding streams, and how that fits into your particular classification. In my organization, we have, so many different classifications, but not every classification necessarily knows how each department affects, the other one. So once you get to know that, you can use, your ability of being politically astute to kind of put the pieces together, and then you can. So when you have your technical abilities and you use your communication skills to talk to people, you're talking about how your job is related to a larger picture, which is, fits into strategic plans and op plans and so forth. And that way, people know that you add value. Also, you can speak on the morale of an organization and, kind of give the higher ups a feeling of what's happening on the ground. That's the ability of somebody who's politically astute. So both of these things have value, and I want you to think about these two concepts going forward. So as usual, I like to break things down a little bit and give you just a couple of notes as to what I think helps people get promoted in general. The first one is step up when you don't have to. So I'll give an example. When I was a social worker, way back in the day, I was single back then. I didn't have any children. And it was a situation where, especially when I was at what's called the front end, you could get a referral. It was called an IRS referral at any time. And basically, the way it happened is your name would be on a rotating list. So, for example, if you get one, then your name goes to the bottom of the list. And with an IRS referral, many times you have to go out and see that child within 2 hours, because this is a CPS referral, obviously. And we're there to assess, safety and risk. So this child could be in danger. So these are very high-level referrals, and you can get them at any time of the day. So just because you get off at 5, at 4:30, you might have one, and you don't know how long these things last. You could be driving 10 miles, 20 miles, and it could be a situation where you actually, are out there until midnight, depending on the situation. Usually it didn't take that long, but yeah, it could be. It could be a situation where you end up removing a child, which has a lot of factors that are included in that. So why am I bringing this up as far as step up? Well, because I had a lot of social freedom, because I didn't have a wife, I didn't have kids, but I knew a lot of my coworkers, and I said before that, obviously, not obviously, but as you might suspect, most social workers are women. So we had a lot of people who were mothers, single mothers, a lot of them. A lot of people who were, I'm not saying that this couldn't be for guys too, but just in my particular situation, people who were caregivers and, having to stay out past their scheduled leave time could be problematic at times, even though, that's the job they had. So they would have to make all kinds of arrangements and blah, blah, blah. Sometimes I would just say, you know what, I'll take that one. And I'll do it. So how does that help? Well, first of all, obviously it helps the person, the individual, helps your coworker. And I think you should do this anyway. It shouldn't be for selfish reasons. But it stands out and it helps you. So I wasn't the most technically proficient social worker. There were social workers who were way beyond me as far as knowledge and skill. Yet I stood out because I was always ready to go to bat for anyone. If there was somebody who was, going into a dangerous neighborhood, at a certain time, I'll volunteer to either go with them or I'll do it myself, even though I had a full plate, of my own, and I think that these aren't things that happened every day. It wasn't like I was just taking on stuff just to take on stuff, but I actually cared about my coworkers and I wanted to help them, and they like to help me too. I wasn't the only helpful person, and I think that's the way a unit or an organization should run. And because of that, people would, especially the higher ups, they notice these things. They notice like, oh, this guy's a team player. When it goes back to that item of fit, when people talk about, well, is this person going to be a good fit? They want somebody who is a self-starter. They want somebody who's willing to step up and help, because really that's what bosses really are afraid of. They don't want somebody who's like, oh, it's 5, I'm gone. Sorry. I got a happy hour to go to, That's not what any boss wants. They want somebody who's willing to be flexible, who understands that, yes, these are the written parameters of the job, but sometimes your duties are going to take you beyond that. And even though legally they can't force you, they like the fact that you're willing to do so. Now, let's say you're not the type of person like me who had a lot of free time in the after hours or so, who could always step up in that particular way. Well, another thing, and this is actually probably even more important, sometimes your bosses need somebody who's willing to do a special project. So, yeah, maybe you're taking more time during the day. And again, you might have a full plate, but if you're willing to spend a few hours a week, on a PowerPoint presentation or doing a little research, that thing also stands out. And I would do a couple of those things too. Even if it's something as benign as, hosting an all-staff event. and coming up with the agenda and inviting a guest speaker. And yeah, it might be a month away, and you might have to take some extra time to do that. These things stand out because they're like, wow, this person took charge of a project. Obviously your director's not going to do it. It's going to be beneath him or her to do that, and they have a lot on their plate. But you stepped up and you made something happen that needed to happen. And more importantly about this type of stepping up is that you're actually taking on assignments that you could learn from, and it's something that can differentiate you from all of your peers. Because if you're in a classification, and unless you're trying to jump to a different track, right? Meaning like if you were going to go to social work to IT, well then, yeah, a lot of your past experience and stuff that you did before that, your current job is going to count. But if you're looking to like promote to like social work supervisor or a supervisory track within, just an upper, just, farther in the track that you're already in is what I'm trying to say. Well, then you and your coworkers, you and your peers, your resumes are going to look pretty much identical, especially if you've all been there for a few years or so. So how are you going to stand out? What makes you different other than your interviews? And you don't want to have the choice be made strictly on an interview. There's always going to be somebody who's going to be able to interview better. And and you never know who they're going to interview. So that's more of a coin flip, or even less than a coin flip, because a coin flip means there's only two of you. You want something on your resume, something that you can bring up during an interview. I worked on this. And then if you're the only one who worked on that, and you might have it, not only does it show that you're willing to take one for the team and willing to put in extra work, it actually might be a difference. You might have different skills now because you took on these particular projects. You might have different knowledge banks. And not only that, what I found out was when I volunteered, I used to be on what did they call it? It was kind of like a staff advisory committee. And because I volunteered to do that, I got to meet with my appointing authority once a month, which is somebody who's like 4 or 5 levels higher than I was. And so this is a person who was in charge of the entire region. And because I was there, it's like when I go up for promotion, the person who's in charge of the entire region knows my name. You know what I mean? They might be talking about me in meetings that I'm not even aware of. So you're getting your name out there, and you're getting your name out there in a positive way because you stepped up when other people didn't. So that's the first point. Step up when you don't have to. Second of all, know your bosses and know your organization. I can't stress enough. There's all kinds of personality tests that corporations and organizations like to do. Gallup has the Strength Finder. There's one where, everyone gets a color, like, red, blue, and green. Red is kind of like, the assertive alpha hothead, and then blues are like more of the soft strength people, and greens are more of the pragmatists. Whatever it is, kind of get a hold of the knowledge of the people who are above you and the people who are going to be making hiring decisions. Not just before an interview, but just so you have good communication. So when I talk about being politically astute, this is what's going to help you. This is what politically astute people do naturally. So if you're not politically astute, or if that's not your biggest strength, these are the kind of things that you can practice and kind of get to know the people in your organization. And so you can communicate that's in a way that they're going to be receptive. And that's what you really want. And when I talk about communication, I'm not talking about a one-time thing. I'm talking about, something that could happen over the period of a year. And they get to know you, and they're like, oh, yeah. And, remember the name. If there's somebody who's very family-oriented, some bosses are very open about their family and their husbands, and they're very proud of their kids' accomplishments. Remember those things, How's your kid doing, Oh, I heard, your kid got their black belt, in Taekwondo, is he still practicing, I heard your kid got injured skiing, I heard your daughter, just, got an achievement award, blah, blah, blah. Those type of things to somebody who is proud of that matters. Maybe it's somebody who's more closed off and they're just totally business. And then well, this is what I'm working on. What do you think? Ask their opinion. If they're the type of people who are just about the business and they keep their personal life out of work, and you can talk business with them, that might be somebody who appreciates you asking them about their expertise. What's your opinion on this project? What's your opinion on this particular assignment? I'm seeking a mentor. Do you have anyone in mind? Maybe they'll volunteer themselves. Maybe they'll actually go out and get you a mentor. These type of communication things are not just things that are window dressing. These are things that you actually need anyway. So I encourage you to do that, and you have to start by knowing what type of personalities you're dealing with. And so once you get a handle on that, the communication process goes a lot more smoothly. Also, learn how your organization is structured. Learn who makes what decisions, who has the power over what, to do what. What departments feed your department, These are very important because I know so many people, and even myself, when I was a social worker, I didn't actually know how HR worked. I didn't know that there were two HRs. That there was one over my business unit, and then there was one in every other business unit, and then there was one that encompassed the entire organization. I didn't know that, and a lot of people don't know that. If your job is has union workers, how does the union fit in? How does labor relations work? These are little things that might not have to do and may not touch your particular classification at any given point in time. But if you know that, again, when we're talking about products, right? If you look at yourself as a product, the one thing that companies look for is differentiation. What makes you buy a GoPro over a Sony, FDR? What makes you buy a BMW over a Lexus? There has to be some type of differentiation because a car is a car, a camera is a camera, or is it? And if somebody can get that differentiation into the mind of the purchaser, then they win. So you have to be able to do that and find out what makes you stand out. And sometimes what makes you stand out is your just organizational knowledge. And so that's very important, and it's just going to help you. It's just going to help you, and you see once you know how things work in your organization, who's who makes what decisions. If you're in contracts, how does purchasing work? If you're in purchasing, how does IT work? If you're a social worker, well, how do you get your funding? How come I have to enter these type of codes in my Kronos payroll? Why do I have to do that? If you know these type of things, it helps you in your interviews too, because you're going to be able to bring up things that are actually matter to people who are 2, 3, 4 levels higher than you, and then you're on your way because they're looking at you now. It's like, oh, this person is executive material. This person just isn't, supervisory material. This person can go a long way, and that's what people are really looking for. They're not looking for you just to fill the role of one position. They want somebody who has longevity in the organization. And number 3. And this is something that you should be regardless, but I'll just sum it up by saying be humble. Now, that's kind of like a very general statement, but what I mean is that when you work in an organization, everyone has power and influence. That's the way you have to look at it. And if you're working with people who, and I don't know where you are in your organization, but the janitor, and I say this a lot of times, the custodial staff, talk to them, say hi to them, remember their names. These people have influence in an organization. Now, it might not be the type of influence that's going to get you a promotion, but the fact of the matter is that, if this person is like, if the security guard, if you're working late on the project and you got to get it in, but you have to be out of the building at 7, but Billy, and you talk to him every day, you say hi to him every day, maybe he'll give you an extra 5 minutes and not make you shut off your computer right away. That could be the difference between you getting a project done on time or getting written up. Remember, the names, talk to people, say hi to people. Admin secretaries have more knowledge of the organization than the executives do. Because not only do they set the schedule for an executive, they set the schedule with other executives to meet with that executive. They know everybody, and they know each other, administrative secretaries are probably, if they formed a group of just them, would be some of the most powerful. It'd be the most powerful group on earth. Imagine Putin's secretary and Trump's secretary. They could do anything. They could probably prevent wars or start them if they wanted to. So always be nice to the administrative secretaries. And I think just as a general philosophy, and this is going to help you once you do get to higher positions, is that the people with the most influence over your career are actually beneath you. And when I say beneath you, I don't mean that in a derogatory way. I mean that just in a classification hierarchy. The people who you manage or the people who you supervise are going to determine the success in your career far more than the people above you who are actually going to interview you. And they're the ones who make you look good. You're standing on their shoulders. You're standing on their shoulders so you can reach higher levels. So treat them well. Treat them well every day. And be humble and understand that they have goals and dreams too. The reason that I feel free and that I feel that I have the ability to advance in my career is because I like helping other people with theirs. Nothing makes me feel better than somebody I've talked to or mentored and they tell me, hey, I got an interview. Hey, Brian, I'm starting in this new position. Even if they surpass me, and that's happened. I've trained somebody who's actually surpassed me. I don't hate on them. And that brings me to my last point. Don't hate. Don't hate. Be happy for other people. Be happy for people who competed with you for the same position and they got it over you. You're not gonna hit, a home run every single time. Sometimes you're not going to get it. And sometimes, somebody well, and whether or not you think they deserved it or not, or you think that you deserved it more, blah, 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 be happy for people. When you're happy for people, there's always going to be a light at the end of the tunnel, and there's always going to be a ladders to climb up. Because when you're depressed or when you're angry and when you're bitter about your job, that comes out, that energy just spills out and people can see it, they can feel it. And it's gonna hamper you. It's gonna hamper your efforts in trying to advance in your career. So I'm trying to make this a pretty quick one today. I just wanted to give you some practical thoughts on what I'm thinking. I know, springtime, a lot of people are hiring. There's a lot of positions opening. I know in a few organizations that I'm aware of, just a bunch of hiring, and a bunch of friends of mine and people and acquaintances are applying for jobs right now. And so I thought I'd put that out there. So good luck in your search. Remember, you always got to have a good resume, good interview skills. Those are always a must. But think about what I talked about. Step up when you don't have to. Know your bosses in your organization, and be humble. This is Brian P. This has been Scaling the Well. Talk to you next time.